January 9th, Richard Wurmbrand.
At times, God's only option for you will be to stand firm, be bold, and speak up. In 1944, when 1 million Russian troops poured into Romania, Richard Wurmbrand saw it as an opportunity to share the love of Christ. He felt compelled to help the Russian soldiers know Jesus Christ. Wurmbrand knew the Communist Party had hijacked the minds of these soldiers, and they could no longer think for themselves. They were unable to believe in God unless they were ordered to. And the communist takeover was beyond swift. 23-year-old King Michael I had been left on his own to deal with the sudden shift of power. There was no time for a propaganda campaign to sway the masses' attitudes towards Stalin. When the foreign secretary of the Soviet Union barged into King Michael's office, he demanded the communists be given government positions. Young King Michael could not resist. Communists muscled their way into the Romanian government while war-weary American and British forces finished off the Nazis in Europe. Once police and military power in Romania had been dismantled, the overthrow was complete. Churches and their leaders were now subject to communists who bombarded the people with constant propaganda and intimidation. Knowing Romanians had strong interest in religion, the communists sought to consolidate power by gaining the support of all the different Christian denominational leaders. In 1945, they held a meeting of 4,000 pastors, priests, and ministers in the Parliament building at Bucharest. Stalin was the honorary president of this so-called Congress of Cults. As a pastor, Wurmbrand was required to attend. One by one, ministers, priests, and bishops from various denominations stood and praised the communist regime and said the church could coexist with communism and assured their loyalty to its Stalinistic rule. Richard's wife, Sabina, told him, "Stand up and wash away this shame from the face of Christ." In her eyes, they were spitting on Jesus. "If I do, you'll lose your husband," Richard said. "I do not wish to have a coward for a husband," she answered. There was no turning back. Richard stepped up to the podium in front of a packed audience and praised Jesus, proclaiming that God and his son Jesus Christ demanded their full loyalty. His statement of faith was broadcast live throughout Romania. The powers accused Wurmbrand of counter-revolutionary lies, and he spent 14 years behind bars. His wife Sabina was consigned to slave labor for 3 years. Wurmbrand was starved, beaten, tortured, whipped, and pressed to betray his brethren. "Why don't you give in?" a tormentor asked him. "It is all so futile. You are only flesh, and you will break at the end," he told them. But Wurmbrand did not break. He knew he was more than flesh. He knew he was a child of God. In the words of Jesus found in Matthew 16:25, "For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it." In today's culture, is God calling you to stand firm in your faith? Is he calling you to be bold and speak the truth? Today, are you willing to pray and ask God to give you his strength to stand firm, be bold, and speak up? In these days, it may be your only option.
Hello friends, today is January 9th, Richard Wurmbrand. When I listen to a story about this and I think about the pressures and the demands like a man like this was under, I often wonder to myself, how would I respond in such a situation? Propaganda, persecution, prison, slave camps, all of those things were experienced by he and or his wife, simply because they stood up for Christ. I don't know where you find yourself today. I don't know what country you find yourself in. I don't know what your experience is right now. But I question whether or not, when the pressure was there, would I be able to respond like Richard. Richard had a deep conviction in his heart that he was not going to compromise what he knew to be true about Christ and the Word of God. So even though other clergy and other believers were compromising, he refused to do that. So my challenge today for all of us is this: in the face of adversity, have you settled the issue that regardless of the threats, circumstances, or situations, you will refuse to deny Christ? I think we need to make that decision prior to finding ourselves in a difficult spot. I wonder if Richard did that. I pray that you'd be challenged as I am today and convicted that God would give you the strength to do what only you can do. God bless you. Have a great day.